Tonight's event will be videotaped by Missoula Community Access Television as part of its Media Assistance Grants Program to nonprofit organizations. So you'll be able to see this repeated in the future on the cable access channel locally. And we'll send out information about when that will be rebroadcast. But tonight it's my pleasure to introduce Tom Acevedo, CEO at S&K Technologies in St. Ignatius. He is a member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes, a graduate of the University of Montana, who earned his law degree from the University of New Mexico. He was former chief of staff, excuse me, for the different meaning, I guess, for the Mohegan Tribe in Connecticut, and former chief of staff for the National Indian Gaming Commission. Mr. Acevedo has served on several national Indian organizations and was appointed by President Barack Obama to the National Advisory Council on Indian Education. S&K Technologies Incorporated was awarded a nearly $1 billion U.S. Air Force contract for S&K Aerospace in 2012, with subsidiary companies spanning information technology, logistics, aerospace engineering, and environmental construction. S&K Technologies is the embodiment of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes' vision of blending the wisdom and values of the past with the capability and technology of the future. Please join me in welcoming Tom Acevedo.
Makeup. I'm pleased to be here, and of course you just heard from Dean and Amy, who work on our staff and are very, very valuable employees for us at S&K. And one thing that you may have noticed when they said their undergraduate degrees is that there is no direct path. Mine was in political science here at the university, and with a minor in history and psychology. And I'm a big believer in psychology when it comes to management. So that's sort of as an opener. Well, thank you all for asking us to come here and talk to you about S&K Technologies Incorporated. As it was mentioned by Christina, the company is wholly owned by the Salish and Kootenai tribes. It is also a unique company in that it is federally chartered under Section 17 of the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934. Just by way of background, the Salish and Kootenai tribes were the first tribe in the United States to adopt the Indian Reorganization Act as a form of government. They had been historically a hereditary chief system. As that system broke down in our relationship to the United States, the tribe was floundering in terms of its leadership. So in '34, it seemed like the appropriate thing to do, and they adopted the Indian Reorganization Act as a Republican form of government, small r, not big R. I'm a Democrat. And so it's a 10-member tribal council that's elected on staggered terms for 4-year terms. We just had our primary election this past weekend, and then we'll have our general election in December, excuse me. S&K Technologies company is a spin-off of S&K Electronics. S&K Electronics is a manufacturing company. It also is wholly owned by the Salish and Kootenai tribes. S&K started out its life back in the 1980s and struggled for a number of years of trying to find its niche in the manufacturing business. To date, we can say that it continues to work and thrives for the tribe, employs about 110 people on a regular basis, has numerous contracts throughout the United States with other companies that it provides its manufacturing products to. It was originally, after it had been incorporated by the tribes, it adopted the SBA Small Business 8A program as a method of growing the company at a particular time when Native American tribes were not supposed to be a part of that program. It had been really designed, the SBA program, for individuals in the minority sector that needed a leg up to get started. So it was sort of a strange thing for tribes to be applying for the SBA 8A program when that really wasn't what it was geared up to be. Subsequent to that, the act was amended, regulations were set up, and then tribes were fully incorporated into that particular SBA 8A program. Technologies was spun off in 1999 from S&K Electronics as a result of a services contract that was offered to S&K Electronics. Because of the nature and the size of the contract, S&K Electronics did not feel comfortable to manage that particular contract. Technologies, as a startup company, we were capitalized with a $150,000 investment from electronics that got us started. Our net worth now is estimated to be around $50 million. We have gross annual revenues now in excess of $100 million a year. We have returned back to the tribe in direct dividends, separate and distinct from employment and other donations we made, about $16 million in direct dividends to the tribal government. The tribe then uses those monies for whatever governmental purposes they deem appropriate, whether it be education, health care, housing. It's across the board in terms of how they apply that. And once we turn it over to the tribe, it is totally theirs to do with as they see fit as a governing body through the tribal council. That contract that I mentioned that created us, S&K Technologies, was under the Foreign Military Sales Program, which is offered by the United States Air Force. That particular program is run out of the Warner Robins Air Force Base in Georgia. And the contract piece that we picked up at that particular time was to service and repair the Royal Saudi Air Force's F-16 jets that are purchased through the United States FMS program. We held that contract for over 10 years, and we still have work in Saudi on some of that particular original FMS work. One of the things that you may want to know about is that when the United States authorizes the sale of these kinds of weapon systems, a lot of the technology that goes into certain guidance systems is proprietary, and there are security clearances that are required to be able to open those particular boxes within those aircraft. And so we continue to do that work because we have the security clearance. And even though a company in Saudi now actually handles that particular contract, the guidance systems that exist in those airplanes are subject to our control and repair. So that's been a very, very lucrative contract for us for a number of years. It continues to be so, and we continue to grow that business in the kingdom. Just by way of digressing for a minute, having been over to the kingdom a couple of times, it is the most alien world that I've ever been to. It is a unique country in that it is the center of the Muslim world in terms of Mecca and Medina. It is the preserver of the historical Orthodox method of practicing as a Muslim. And as a consequence of that, it is very strict. Also, the king is in charge of the country, and as kings are wont to be, kings do what they want to do. When you're over there, I often reflect and think about, this is what it was like in England, or this is what it was like in, some other country that had kings. They can do what they want to you, when they want to with you. So even though you feel sort of comfortable, you're also sort of looking over your shoulder in a way. It's sort of an interesting world to be in. With respect to you young women in the room, from my perspective, it's a highly repressive regime in terms of growing and developing their women within the country. They wear the niqab. Full burqas as well. When they're out and about in the streets of, for example, Riyadh, the capital, excuse me, you never see them alone. You always see them with 2 or 3 other women, or you see them with their husbands or a male family relative with them as well. I don't know if you've seen recently in the press, they have, some of the women are protesting the fact that they want to drive in the kingdom. And so there's some tension going on right now. The other part that I think you'll see in the change, and it'll take a number of years for that to come about. They have now established a university system in there that they're trying to educate their women in higher education. Once those women pass through those doors and come out those doors, you're going to start to see a cultural change. I think it's going to happen. But it'll take time, and it won't be without a struggle. You have some very, very strict Orthodox folks within that kingdom in terms of how they enforce themselves through a system of religious police called the Matawa, and they have their own system of administering justice from their perspective. So one can expect a lot of challenges for those young women as they go through that university system, but it will eventually bring about, I think, any improvement for the society as a whole. Back on point, It was initially believed by the management that this one-off contract that we secured through S&K Technologies from electronics and then to through the Air Force, that this was going to be a one-off particular contract. The tribe historically would create a business and think about this is going to be the only thing it's going to do, and it's not going to do other things. A light bulb went on at home. With the successful performance of this particular FMS contract, other contract opportunities came to us. So with this success, we said, let's revisit our business model and not just have this one-off company of technologies doing this one particular contract. So in 2006, we changed our business model. We incorporated, as I mentioned, technologies under the Federal Indian Organization Act. It's called a Section 17 corporation. And then as we started to look at other business opportunities and other contracts, we have continued to create limited liability companies. Those LLCs are managed by a president. Our business model, we strongly believe in a horizontal management structure with independent managerial authority vested in each of the presidents. That gives them direct contact with the folks that work with them on the particular contracts where they're located, and it allows the freedom to be creative. It allows them the freedom to network with other opportunities that may arise out there wherever they're working on our behalf. It has worked really well for us. I know once we bring people into our managerial structure, whether it be at a vice president level or at the president level, they absolutely love the freedom of being able to figure out what are the opportunities out there and how they can make this business grow. And a lot of our folks had come out of the military, so they were used to this hierarchical, the general on down, and so as officers, they were used to that system, so they had to adapt to this new method of doing business with us. And once they get comfortable with it, they said they could not go back to the old style of management, and they love the creativity that we give them. As I mentioned, this horizontal management structure, I really believe, when we talked about psychology, if you can take some psychology courses, take some here while you got the chance. It really gives you a good perspective across the board and how to deal with people, how to manage with people, how to understand, you know, what the give and take is to work with those folks. So I recommend that to all of you. Under our LLC business model, the parent corporation, that is Technologies, us, located in St. Ignatius and in Polson, we provide a series of services to those LLCs so that it frees them up to do other things. We provide human resources services in hiring. We administer the 401k plan that we have for our employees. We provide the health insurance coverage model that we work with. We provide legal overviews of their contracts, of the leases that they do, where they're locating their buildings. We provide the financing to get those companies started, and we continue with them on terms of lines of credit as they need them as they're administering the various contracts. We also provide the accounting services at St. Ignatius. We currently have about 400 folks that work for us throughout the United States and in the Middle East. The reason we do this is manifest, as I just told you. Secondary to that, it allows these LLCs to focus directly on the contracts they're administering and to have a direct interface with the customer on a day in, day out basis and not have to worry about that whole other level of services. Second to that, it allows us to reduce the costs of providing all of those services, because by centralizing it in S&K Technologies in St. Ignatius Polson, those folks that are located out throughout the United States and the Middle East for us don't have to worry about that, and they don't have to gear up and provide and duplicate all those services, so that it works out well for this. And we charge them a percentage fee on their revenues for the service we provide, so that allows us to be able to provide those direct services to the LLCs. As I mentioned a minute ago about the offices, let me just let you know where they are located. We have offices in Bremerton, Washington, Grand Junction, Colorado, Warner Robins, Georgia, Dayton, Ohio, Houston, Texas, and Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The most challenging place for us, obviously, to get started was in Riyadh. We had been doing work there for a number of years, as I mentioned, since '99, but we never had put a permanent office in the kingdom. We had talked about it for about 3 or 4 years, about the efficacy of doing that. We decided that we would go ahead and go forward because we were being told that if you really want to get additional business in Saudi, you're going to have a permanent office here. And so we started down that path. It took us almost a year to get through all the licensing and paperwork and governmental structure that exists within the kingdom to be able to get that office established. My folks told me that the rationale that they were getting through the various entities they dealt with in the kingdom was they want to make it really difficult because they want to know that you're going to stay, so that you're just not going to open a business, close the front after a month or two because of the expense of going through it and all the headaches of going through their regulatory process. So with that, we've had that office open now for about 18 months, and we'll continue to keep it open. It seems to be assisting us in that growth of the business in the kingdom. Let me mention a couple of examples of the diversity of kinds of contracts that we manage. We have one with NASA, with the Executive Directorate in Houston. The primary purpose of that contract is to revise NASA's contracting functions. It's a 5-year contract with a 5-year option, and it is the first large growth contract we've gotten with NASA over a number of years. We've done small contract work with them for a very long time. I had felt that NASA as an entity was suffering financially and it wasn't going to be able to be a growth area for us. In about 18 months ago, I thought about closing our office in Houston. I'm glad I didn't when we got this new award, and we ramped up. I think we hired an additional 50 people, I'm guessing off the top of my head. I can't recall off the top. So that's going very, very well for us. Another contract we have is with the Department of Energy. We provide tax services, technical assistance for the removal of uranium mill tailings in Moab, Utah. Years ago, those tailings were milled down there right next to the Green River, Arches National Park, beautiful area, and there was a real danger of those mill tailings leaching into that beautiful ecosystem there. So we're in I think the 5th year of that contract. And we have another 5 years on that particular contract that'll probably get rolled over again because it's about a 15-20 year challenge to remove all of those mill tailings that are located there in Moab. And that's the reason we have the office in Grand Junction. We're administering that particular contract out of that office there. I mentioned briefly the Foreign Military Sales Program. That's a unique one for us that we were recently awarded, the $975 million you heard about, which is a ceiling within that particular contract. It involves 93 countries that participate in the United States' Foreign Military Sales Program. Our expertise and how we were awarded that contract was from our original contract in our repair and return service with the Royal Saudi Air Force that we had back in '99. A very tough contract to secure, and it's a very difficult contract to administer. We kid in the office about, the Affordable Care Act and all the challenges they have in terms of getting their software system up, because the Foreign Military Sales Program that the Air Force had, we call it AFSAC, there is an antiquated system as well. And we've been encouraging the Air Force to try to improve that software system. We're getting complaints from the countries that are using it. We get complaints from the vendors who are the suppliers under it because it's such a cumbersome, difficult software system to use. And so hopefully over the next several years, they'll work to improve that and make it more user-friendly, primarily for the countries and secondarily for the vendors as well. As a general context about our scope of work, we have approximately 80% of our work is with the federal government. Another 15% is with contracting with other companies that may or may not be contracting with the federal government. And the remaining is 5% of general commercial work that we do in the company. We'd like to sort of have more of a balance on that over the next several years and grow the general commercial work in S&K, and that's one of our milestones we're working towards over the next several years. Since some of you are students in the room, and let me do sort of a change here in focus and talk about the potential for your professional careers. Recently had the opportunity to read an article in Harvard Business Magazine about leadership. it was tagged the tri-sector leadership. And I went, what the heck is tri-sector leadership all about? Well, as I read the article, it discussed various examples of individuals that had been effective leaders, and the article posited the concept that all of these individuals were effective because throughout their various phases of their careers, each one worked in government at some point, in business at some point, and in the nonprofit sectors. They didn't set out to do that. It just came upon them as they functioned throughout their careers in business. And the article pointed out that by working in these three other sectors and to become successful leaders, they did so because they acquired a variety of skills, capabilities, and values and experiences. So each sector, whether it be the governmental function sector or the for-profit business or a nonprofit one, they gained from working in each of those environments, and it made them much more effective as a leader overall. And they had a better understanding and comprehension of the interdependency in the business world, governmental world, and the nonprofit world, of how they all intersect at some point in time at various levels. So, a good article. I think it's one I recommend to you if you have a chance to read it. And as I read the article, I sat back and I started to reflect on my own career, and realized that I was one of those people that had followed the tri-sector path inadvertently as well. Straight out of law school, I worked as an attorney in the Washington, D.C. office for the Office of the Solicitor. So that was my governmental first experience in terms of understanding how that whole massive agency works there in Washington, D.C. When I left D.C., I then met up with a couple of other folks that I knew. We formed a law partnership in Colorado, and we practiced law there for a number of years. So we had to learn about how to structure our business, how to establish our line of credits with the banks, and how to go out and collect from our clients, and how to manage the staff in that particular endeavor in the law partnership. Learned a lot as a result of that experience. And that's when my other partners started to see that I had some sort of managerial skills, I guess is the best way to say it. And so I started to manage the staff when I was down there in that law partnership. I then, later I came back home to Montana, to Salish Kootenai, to do some litigation on behalf of the tribe. As circumstances came about when I got back home, a lot of that particular litigation that they wanted me to handle for them had been wrapped up. So I took a look at their then businesses. You had S&K Electronics at that particular time. They had a small sawmill post and pole operation located on the reservation. And they had some other small, sort of miscellaneous businesses that they had started, and they really weren't functioning well, and they really weren't producing anything for them. And I sat in that first year in the tribal councils when they're going over their budgets, and I saw these managers come in and ask for subsidies all the time, and saying, and their big sales pitch, which really went well with the politicians, is that we are employing so many people, 50 over here, 25 supported families over here. That sounds really good if you're an elected politician, because that's what gets you your votes to get you reelected. What it's not doing is not creating the business atmosphere that you need. It's clearly not producing dividends back to the tribe, and also the long-term longevity of those particular companies is highly questionable as to whether or not they could survive. So there's a disservice across the board, other than the small cadre of people that were benefiting as direct employees. And they also had employee problems. I remember when I was dealing with the sawmill operation down at Dixon, they were giving bonuses for people to show up for work. I mean, I just rolled my eyeballs on that one, and then getting subsidies for it as well from the tribal governmental coffers. We tried to make that a going concern company down there. We worked on it for about a year, realized that the logistics in terms of the whole layout of the plant required too many employees, so we finally decided to shut that operation down several years ago, and that was a very good decision on behalf of the tribes in terms of protecting their businesses. As I mentioned earlier, on the law firm, I then, when I got those businesses going, One of the things that we worked on as a new venture for the tribe was the Quatucknick Resort there on the lake. That used to be an old sawmill site. The tribal council approached us in the business sector that I'd set up and said, would you create a resort business for us here? And so we did. And that has been successful now for the tribes. That opened in 1992. And has been a going concern ever since. There is some small gaming that goes on with that. It's a resort hotel, and it is the only one on the lake. Interesting for the size of Flathead Lake, it is the only resort directly located on the lake itself. There was in the intro about me. One of the things that I did after I finished my work at the tribe and we put Quatucknick together, I was offered a position in the nonprofit sector with a Council of Energy Resource Tribes in Denver, Colorado. That particular nonprofit for a number of years had about 47 tribes who are participants in that particular nonprofit, and the Council of Energy Resource Tribes provided assistance in terms of tribes trying to develop various energy opportunities on their reservations, whether it be oil and gas, coal development, uranium development, hydro, wind power, and so that was my ongoing experience in a nonprofit world, and I learned a lot about having to apply for grants and seek assistance in that area. And it was not one of my most pleasant experiences. It's a real challenge. I'd rather be focused on the bottom line. As was mentioned, I also then followed that up with an appointment to the Chief of Staff for the National Indian Gaming Commission in Washington, D.C. That was a great experience for purposes of understanding of the regulatory systems that the United States sets up whenever they want to regulate X, whatever X is. And this one happened to be tribes conducting gaming casinos throughout the United States. As a result of that opportunity, I was then approached by the Mohegan tribe to help them set up their then startup of their casino, Mohegan Sun. We had to secure financing for that particular venture. The first time that an Indian tribe secured high-yield bonds, publicly traded high-yield bonds on Wall Street. So that was a milestone, a brand new thing that Indian country had never done. The other thing that was unique for us that we had to structure is that under the Indian Regulatory Act, any financing that you do, any debt that you take on, the entity that's supplying that money for the tribe cannot own the entity in the event of default. All they can do is strip the machines out, strip out, all of sort of those things, but the actual enterprise itself, the structure, and the ability to manage and operate the casino is not allowed under the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. So that was a real challenge for us to convince, the various investment houses that issued high-yield bonds that this would have been a safe thing to do, and this was the right thing to do. And we had come up with a concept of working through that, and it's now commonplace as a result of the work that we did at Mohegan Sun in those early years. And the company grew to a $1 billion enterprise with 10,000 staff members. And I did that for 10 years, and that was an exciting period of time. And you learn an awful lot about how the street works in New York, as well as the various investment houses throughout the United States. We went out on road shows, pitched the deals to the various investment houses, and you really got a sense of the kinds of questions they asked, the kinds of security they were looking for on behalf of their investors, as well as that. So. One of the things that I want to do is leave enough time for questions from all of you. So with that, I'm going to conclude with it with a quote. And it may seem strange when we're talking about business, but this is the diversity of the world and the kinds of degrees you can have in business. This quote from Louis Pasteur, his quote is, "In the field of observation, chance favors only the prepared mind." So with that, thank you. Questions?
Actually, when you were just talking about the Native American-owned entities that you can't go in and take the property. So would that apply to a Native American company on any other reservation?
The answer is no to that. in particular in terms of management. In other words, let's say, for example, I'll use Quatucknick as an example, the non-gaming part of Quatucknick. What we did with that one, when we set that up, I looked around and I looked for some sort of model of a contract or a lease that we could construct that would make that, and that was wholly bank financed in addition to a tribal dollar investment in that particular enterprise. We put that together, and I found that in Hawaii, all those big hotels that are built there are all leases, and they're leaseholds. So I said, well, let's construct this as a leasehold. So we'll do a leasehold property from the tribe to us, creating the Quatucknick company. And with that, we stand independent then of the tribe, and we have a term of years, say 50 years or 25 years, whatever the leasehold that you want. That then allowed us to use that for purposes of getting financing from the banks, and they felt comfortable with that. And they could come in and run Quatucknick, so that if we had defaulted, say, in 3 years or 5 years after that business went up, the bank could come in, seize the property, operate it for the term of the leasehold. They would never ultimately own the building or the land that it sat on, but they could continue to operate and get their cash out of it that way.
So that's it. So the sovereign land can't be owned. It's if you have, that's a really interesting way to do it.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the biggest problems around here is that they talk about wanting to develop a lot of the reservations around here, but there's no bank wants to touch it. They just, and I don't think anybody has the acumen right now, not collectively, to actually establish something that complex without being close to city centers. And so I guess just the first step, you know, and to actually get businesses that support one another is probably the most difficult thing that I've seen, especially here in Montana.
And that's a good question. I mean, and that's a good insight as well, because that is true. And back to that sort of tri-sector thing that you have to do as a leader, you have to focus on what is the concern if the lending institution wants to lend you the money, but they want the security in the event that you're going to default. How are we going to do that? So a leasehold provides that mechanism, so they can come in and operate that. They couldn't do it in a casino, but they can do it for any other properties that you would do a leasehold from the tribe. So setting up the tribal company like us and doing a leasehold of the wherever the property is located, whatever you're going to do, would provide that security. Now back to who do you have to convince? One is you have to convince the finance institution that's going to lend you the money. Two is you're going to have to convince their legal team, because they're looking at this and just going, I don't understand this. I don't know what this is all about. This is a Native American tribe. I have heard this doctrine of sovereignty hollered, you know, and immunity. Can't sue those characters. And so how do you work through that system? So you've got to sit down with that legal team that works with the banks or whatever lending institution system that you're using, and convincing that legal team that this will work for their client, and the client will be able to have some chance of securing a return of those monies that were lent out in the event of a default situation. And being able to come in and seize management as they need to be. So yeah, but it has to be done. Yeah, and it's not easy to do, and you spend time with it. So, and we have some of our opportunities for us. Example, we were trying to do some bonding for our S&K environmental company, and the bonding entities really have a knee jerk on that as well. And what they wanted to do is reach back into the coffers of the tribe's treasury and saying, in the event of a default on a contract and we have to come in and execute on the bond, we want to be able to come in and tap the tribe's treasuries. And we said, no, we're independent companies, can't do that. You certainly got us. We'll pledge whatever we want that we have as assets within our companies to be able to secure that bond in the event that we don't perform. But we're not authorized, and nor would we approach the tribal government to have their security, that security pledged with the tribe's treasuries. So, but it is a challenge for us, yeah, as well.
I'm wondering if you can talk more about the SBA 8A program that you mentioned. What is that, and how has the tribe used that?
Good question. The SBA 8A program, as I mentioned, is for small businesses to give them a leg up to get them started. It's a 9-year program. We like to have a company about to graduate from the 8A program, and we like to have one coming into the 8A program about the time. That allows us to take advantage of opportunities that are offered, which are what we call, there's a series of kinds of contracts offered under the 8A program. One is a directed sole source. One is the competitive bid of just the other 8A companies within your particular area of expertise that you're bidding against, so that you're not bidding across the world at large that are trying to secure that contract. So it narrows the playing field down. You also have contracts that are negotiated contracts where they're going to offer that out because they wanted to expedite the contract, get it done. So you sit down and work with the customer and negotiate a contract that is in the best interest both of the United States as the customer and also of us as a contracting entity to provide those services under it. The contract has a tiering, the 8A program has a tiering system. You have to do a number of things in year 3, year 4, year 5, and by year 5 into 7, the bulk of your work has to be commercial and not anything within the 8A program that's directed to you. You have to be competitive. And the whole idea behind it is to get the company up and ready and fully grown and developed so by the time it graduates in year 9, that it can go out and function in the general competitive world. Good program. Understaffed by the 8A, the SBA. Takes a while to get things done for purposes of when you apply for and try to get an 8A certified company. Our latest company, SNK LS, is a year in the process. The company's set up and we're actually operating the company and we're securing work outside of the 8A program, but we know there are some lucrative opportunities within the 8A, so we're still pursuing getting that one 8A certified as well. So, yes.
Don't want to jump in front of a student though, so. It's a double-barreled question. Okay, so the first one is how do you identify opportunities? Because it seems like there's a record or a pattern of doing a very good job of identifying opportunities and pursuing them. And the second part of that question then is, how do you do so successfully? Because from what I hear, your opportunities are in very different industries, require different types of expertise. And so how do you enable the companies that do that, how do you enable them to succeed when they may be very different from the parent company?
Okay, yeah, good questions as well. Look at Amy over there. One of the things that we did several years ago when we started this new business model is we said we need to rebrand who we are. We had a very successful, world there for a while in those contracts we were doing, but as we're now going to broaden out and have more LLCs, and we're going to have the parent corporation here in Montana. What it's about us that attracts people to us. So what's our branding? What's our niche? So we spent a lot of time in coming up with a distinctive logo. We also came up with a series, our website. We also came up with a series of brochures that we get out there so that when our folks are out meeting people and talking to folks at the customer level, contracting officers or other folks who are looking to get a contract done that they need within their particular agency, they have materials about us. And we now have a track record of success in our various contracts. So they can contact those people and say, how did S&K do in this particular area? And even though those contracts are diverse that I mentioned, when you come back and look at us, we're really doing sort of one or two really broad things: logistics, repair and return, technical assistance, and computer system setups, those kinds of things, and the management of those various things that need to be done within the contract itself. So we're not making product over here, so it sort of filters back into those things that we do well. We get recognized for that, and so that keeps the success going. And then our folks network. So when we're out hiring people to run the LLCs, the presidents, we're looking for them to have background experience in the various fields that they are, and also to sort of have a cross-pollination with the other presidents, the LLCs, and the senior VPs, so they talk to one another. And they get ideas from one another, and they said, we just heard about this contract over here. Maybe you guys should take a pitch at it, or can we go together on it? Can we team at it? Or we know another company that you should team with and pitch that particular contract opportunity, or submit a proposal back that it's a competitive arena. So it's very dynamic, it's very fluid, it's ongoing all the time, and that keeps us up at night. So making sure we have a good backlog. Yeah.
I have another question.
I think I beat you. So, well, I guess just to kind of simplify it for a lot of us here, what exactly would you say it is you do? Like, what do you do? What's your core competency?
Well, it's a broad one. One, it is logistical services, so that federal agencies need a lot of administrative, managerial assistance for purposes of how various things are done within their agencies as well, and they can only do so much. And so we're asked to fill those gaps where they can't provide those kinds of managerial, administrative, technical services that we can provide. And also, it's a benefit to them because the contracts have a limited life, so they're not hiring personnel that they may not need in 5 years' time. And so we come in, do that work, finish that work, contract finishes. They then don't have a staff there. What do? We lay off all the staff. That's our problem. We needed to have found more work for our folks, so we keep them all employed. Repair and return, so supply chain management is one of our fortes. So we've secured a whole cadre of vendors out there throughout the United States that when we get a call that says we need a wheel for an F-16 or we need a tire for an F-16, we know who to go to. So we go talk to that vendor and saying, we want to buy that from you at price X. We negotiate that price. We then funnel that back through the FMS program. That wheel and tire then goes back to the customer in, I'll use the kingdom, Saudi Arabia as an example, and they get put on the airplane. So that's the kinds of services we could do in that particular arena. The technical services that we do, for example, in the Moab contract, is that we have oversight over that whole contract. We don't actually move the earth of those tailings, but we provide the oversight of how that's done, the timing of it, and the insurance coverages that are needed for that, and the computer systems that we need to keep in place, so that we know the tonnage being moved, the times that are being moved, how long it's going to take, and how many years it'll take before you move so many million cubic yards of uranium mill tailings and have them placed back in a safe environment where they're no longer going to leach in, say, the Green River, for example. So those kinds of services.
So in your supply chain management, do you kind of connect the distribution networks? Is that, it's kind of, you connect the dots?
We do. We connect the dots. Yeah. So we find the vendor. I'll use the tire one again as an example. We go find the vendor that can make that tire, because it's no longer being made by Lockheed Martin. It's now being made by somebody in California that has a small operation, and we go to that vendor, and we'd like to find a number of vendors, because that gives us the ability to get a competitive price out of them. We also get clearance through the Air Force that is a reasonable price that we're paying for that, and then we charge the customer, the country, for that particular service and getting that part back to them, and then they pay us as well as we charge them for that service that we did.
So it must be actually kind of a lucrative dot connecting.
It is actually, the profit margins are pretty slim. They're in 3 and 4%, so it's a real tight. We have to really be competitive. I think that I know that the larger numbers in terms of, say a 15 to 20% margin is on the supplier side, whether he or she is a manufacturing company or whether it's just a supplier of that particular part in terms of fixing it again, sort of thing. They get a broader margin in that, and that's why SKLS, the company we've now formed, we're now becoming a vendor supplier with that particular company, because we could see the markups were so good, and it's a higher profit margin as well for us on that. So we think that's going to be a nice company for us down the road in the next 3 or 4 years. But the services company is tight. Yeah.
I do, and then I'll jump to you. I think it's fascinating that you have this high-tech global company in a relatively rural part of the country, and I'm wondering how you overcome the obstacles of, kind of being rural. So how do you hire skilled employees? How do you overcome transportation and communication?
Yeah, well, I mean, the nice thing about, this day and age with all of the computer systems and the software that's out there and the smartphones that we all have, and the ability to be able to to sit in a room like this, put the television camera on, and somebody's sitting in Houston putting theirs on, and the screen's up, and we're talking to one another. That's a real plus. The transportation in terms of airfare and travel is expensive. It is a challenge out of Missoula, Montana, or out of Kalispell, where we go for both places. That is difficult. But we just live with that. But the other ones is we try to be as efficient as we can in terms of communicating through all the other media that are available to us. You do need occasional face-to-face meetings. That's still what business wants to do. I want to see, feel, and touch you, talk to you, and get a sense about who you really are. Trust. Trust is manifest in business, and so convincing them that we know what we're doing and that we can be trusted, and we'll get the work done in a quality way for whether it be the customer or whoever we're dealing with as a vendor or supplier. So that's one part of it, the other part of it is I did mention we've invested in a couple of companies. One here in Missoula. One is Adelos, which is a company that provides a ground sensor, fiber optic cable in the ground that senses what's stepping over the top of it. So as a perimeter security system, that's been difficult in terms of recruiting people to come in here and to look at that, to see it, because there is a stigma about Montana that you really don't, it's not Silicon Valley. I mean, that really carries so much weight because all those brains are out there and they're all working. So we have that challenge of convincing them that we have really bright people here as well, and that we can work on that. The other company that we have is Terra Echos, which is a metadata gathering system for cybersecurity. And again, that one's a challenge in terms of getting people to accept the fact that that's being developed here in Missoula, Montana, and it's superior to things that are being developed in Silicon Valley, as an example, sort of thing. So it's getting those customers to come here to talk about that, getting other investors, VC companies to come in and talk about we should put some money in this particular operation and this particular thing because the Montana stigma. I'll use that as an example. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Tom.
I believe that you may have touched on my question. I kind of live and work in a digital world, and I was going to ask you in terms of, I know you deal in technology with aircraft and the industries that you do, but when you get into the cyber world, with analytics, and now you're dealing with so many different, in logistics, you've got this one, this one, this one, this kind of buying division and stuff. So you touched on it with Terra Echos and the stigma in Montana, and I've actually been working with some guys in big data. Maybe can ask you to go to that. When you look at, so I see you say you invested in the Delos world. You guys see us moving in that direction in terms of creating some type of a subsidiary that deals with tech, or you guys just outsource?
We're doing it now. We have not secured any customers. We don't have any sales in either one of those companies, sort of thing. So unless the sales come about, we'll kill it. We still have to make money. I'm just excited about the companies in terms of the kinds of things they've done internally. But being able to get the customer to buy what we're offering has been a challenge, sort of thing. So unless that happens, we won't grow. If we get some customers, and that's not for want of beating the bushes, trying to get interested folks in that particular, those two systems. So it's a challenge for us right now. And we've been, the Adela system, we've been hard at it now for about 4 years. The Terra Echos, we've been working on that one now for about 2.5. So, and so lots of money sunk into that, not only from us, but from our, the VC companies that have invested with us as well, taking chances on that particular thing. So one thing that we've learned, there's a long lead time. And then even when you have out of the beta phase and you're ready to go to market, convincing people that yours is as good as or better than other stuff they're looking at throughout the United States. Yeah, it's a challenge.
I was going to ask you about your employees, but now I'm more curious about how, who are your customers for Terra Echos and Adelos? Who are you trying to sell those companies to?
Yeah, who would you think? Who would you think? Who would you think? Who's in the news a lot? How's that? That's one. And then the other one is the Homeland Security. Homeland Security has big dollars, lots of programs. Fiber optic security, we think, is a really nice fit with Homeland Security in terms of border security around sensitive plants that need to be protected, various other kinds of industries that may need that kind of security. And the nice thing about a Delos, as I do in my commercial, is that it integrates with the other systems that there. So if they've got cameras and they've got, you know, computer setups and they've got whatever it is, they got armed guards, they got patrols, our in-ground fiber optics is an adjunct to that. It's not a standalone. It doesn't mean they tear everything down and we supplant it with this system. It integrates into the system like that. So that's what a Delos is all about. And the other one, as you heard Tom mention, it's all about data gathering and cybersecurity. That's a whole different, you know, world that goes on out there and who you're talking to there. So different challenge for there, sort of thing. So, and since they've been in the news a lot lately, they've kind of clammed up. How's that? Any other questions?
You said you had 5% of your customers were private.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do for those customers just generally?
Well, those are the two that I mentioned. Those are the two that we're doing in commercial. Yeah, it's the Delos and Terra Echoes are the two that we are trying to go totally commercial on and a separate thing. Because not only are we talking about, you know, those federal agencies that I mentioned, we're also talking, there's a commercial application. We've been approached, for example, with the Delos one by the oil and gas companies that are out fracking wells and trying to get the data coming out of the wells to tell them what they're doing and get it done in real time. Well, we, in that Delos system, we have the ability to tell them downhole what's going on, sort of thing. So it's convincing them that, and they're looking at other systems as well when we talk to the various oil and gas companies, that our system is superior to anything they're looking at right now. So that's a commercial aspect of that one, separate and distinct from any sort of perimeter security use of that kind of system. So,
Tom? I'd just like to share with everybody that I was in the VC business for startups in Colorado at a time when nobody wanted to go there. And I see Montana as very similar, and with bribery on lift tickets and fishing trips and whatever, you know, it works. And I think Montana is getting better that way every year. But I have a question for you, and I really wanting to direct this more to the students, but there's a lot of discussion in the whole entrepreneurship environment about, you know, should we create opportunities for students to graduate and then go start a business, or should we help them get off into a professional career, and, you know, how people should think about entrepreneurship. So I'm interested in your ideas about that, but also maybe for the students, just, you know, what are a couple, 2 or 3 things that you personally view as skill sets or important things that they should come out of school with?
yeah. Well, the one is, you know, I mentioned psychology. I think if you're going to do any sort of management and understanding psychology, I know it's not offered undergrad, but one of the things that it was really helpful to me in law school was taking corporate law and corporate tax. Those were really valuable skill sets that I got when I went out into the business world, to be able to understand those mechanisms and how they work out there. I don't know if we offer that here in any sort of undergraduate program as part of the business school. Those kinds of things are the kinds of courses I would recommend. Also recommend, because I'm now a believer in this tri-sector leadership sort of thing, is take some background stuff on how the federal government operates and works, state government works, so that you get a sense of how those regulatory regimes that you have to deal with, they're not going to go away. How do you deal with them, and how do you make your company function within that one? I think the broader question is, do we want to create entrepreneurs? How many Steve Jobs, you know, can we have, and how many should we have? As many as we can get. But it comes high risk. I mean, you have to be prepared if you want that challenge to fail. I mean, you talk to any of those folks that are now very successful entrepreneurs who have large businesses. They didn't walk out the door and turn that success overnight. One of the things that we do when you work for a company like us, one of the things that we try to do when we're looking at challenges and going into new areas is never sacrificing the mothership. So we look to make sure that the overall company is solid, and that we continue to maintain our focus on that core set of customers and opportunities that we look at. And then to a lesser degree, we look at saying, we can take some risks and we'll invest so many dollars in this particular opportunity and create this LLC or invest in this particular closed corporation. And if it fails and doesn't work for us, we've learned a lot as a result of doing that, and maybe we didn't make any money, but we can still go on to the next one. So be prepared to not have successes, and really be prepared to embrace the success and make it better once you do have a success in a given area, sort of thing. So it's what is it? It's never giving up, I think is the best sort of thing, attitude you have to have. And sort of, if you stay within sort of like a tri-sector career path that I mentioned, that is not primarily entrepreneur, where you want to start up your own business, recognizing that take every opportunity that's sort of offered to you. The various jobs that I mentioned that I've had, some of them just, once I was in there, I was like, oh my God, why am I doing this? Let me get out of here as quick as I can. But I learned from that as a result of that as well. And so it redirected me into the next job, that but for the fact that had I not taken that one and taken that chance, the next opportunity would not have come. So look constantly, and don't be afraid to move about the United States. I mean, I've lived all over the United States in my career, and then I always keep coming back home. Yeah, I mean, you guys are proud to say you're from Browning. So when can you bring that back? And the other thing I recommend is that when you do go back, make sure you have skill sets already. Don't make your mistakes there. Go make your mistakes someplace else, and because they can't afford it. They can't afford it, and they're going to be risk averse anyway to begin with. So, good question. Yeah.
How do you recruit the talent that you need to work in this?
Well, we have it up on the website all the time, you know, of various job opportunities that are coming our way. We also, when we're out hiring, we do job fairs. Say, for example, when we hired that whole Houston staff, we just opened the doors there and had people come in and make the applications, and we went through the process and then winnowed down to who we needed. And then when we did, and we make mistakes as well. When we did the foreign military sales contract, the large one we just got a couple of years ago, we hired the wrong sort of people within that system. Not that they weren't the people were good people, but we hired the wrong kind of skill sets. We thought we need more sort of mid-level supervisors. Turns out we needed logisticians sitting down there coding in what needed to be in terms of vendor support supplies, so that was moving through the system much more rapidly. So we needed those kind of folks as opposed to mid-level supervisors. And so we had to make a change out there to redirect that staffing, and once we were into the contract. So you learned from that as well. Thanks. I think you got pizza here. I don't know if I'm going to keep you.
More questions? So when do you know it's time to cut your losses on one of the projects?
That's the one that keeps me up at night. I do not have a hard and fast rule. I really don't. One of the things that for example, one of the companies we have now is, it has contracts in progress. It has underperformed on some of the contracts, this particular company, but it also has other great skill sets, and we have quite a bit of equipment in that particular company as a result of what they do. And so we're constantly evaluating, are you going to get new contracts? And if so, what kind of numbers are we looking at here for you? Because when we look at the greater world, we expect our companies, each one of them, to be in the $20 to $30 million range in terms of annual revenues. And we want that kind of performance, because that's sort of the yardstick across the board that the rest of the LLCs are being measured against. And then that rolls it up to that $100+ million that we have in gross revenues. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at. And then I had to close a company down a year ago. We decided, we had a small contract with the Internal Revenue Service, something we'd never done before. It sort of fell into our lap in Austin, Texas, for a security guard service, which is a low-margin business. But we did the analysis, and it looked like there's a lot of that out there. So if you sort of macro it and get a bunch of guard services contracts going, you can make a go of it. So we set one up. We set a company up, functioned for a year, never got a contract. Nothing new ever came that way. Closed it down. So spent a little bit of money on that one. Didn't hurt us overall, on the big picture, but it was certainly an experience that showed us that's not a business we want to be in. And several years ago, before I came on, the company had tried some software development. Was just a nightmare in trying to work up software in terms of the time frames involved, the challenges. I love the Affordable Care Act. It's that kind of challenge. And the more complex the system is, the more difficult it is to get it working and working right, sort of thing. So, and Dean knows that better than I do. So.
Do you have any internship potential for students or anything that the students can look forward to as far as connecting with their...
We have done some interns in the past. We don't have a formal program. One of our employees now, Sean's been with us how long, Dean? He came in as an intern originally, full-time job now with us, but we started him out. Yeah, and he's an alum here, sort of thing. So yeah, but we don't have a formal program. We just sort of, I think you're the one who came to me with that one, right? With Sean. Right. Dean came and said, yeah, I think I need somebody here. Maybe try an intern. Let's try to bring somebody in. And so it's been ad hoc, but we're open to it. How's that? And as a result of that, we have a really good, I mean, Sean's fabulous for us. Really a great guy to work for us. So, is there somebody else on there? You did, yes.
Oh, I just wanted to thank you for coming and showing us and telling us and giving us the advice that we would need if we wanted to go further with our career or life or whatever. Yeah. So I just want to thank you for personally coming here and taking the time out of your day.
Thank you. I'm glad to do it. I sit on the alumni board, so we want to keep all of you engaged here at the university. I want you to all be, active alumni members when you graduate as well, sort of thing, and stay in touch. I mean, we all love football, but there's a lot more that goes on here at the U than just. And I'm a football nut. They know it's every staff meeting I talk about. The Grizz did well, or the Grizz did horrible, or and of course, when we played Sam Houston, right? I remember that one. So.
My question was, I hear you saying that you run LLCs. Is that based on investors? Is that why you guys are running LLCs? I would tend to think corporation is at a big level.
Well, that's very insightful. Our business model has been limited liability companies, and primarily the reason has been, and it goes to Christina's questions about the 8A program. As we set one up and then we'd get it qualified in the 8A program, there's a whole series of codes. I'm not going to bore you with what those codes are, but they're work areas that are nationally set up that the SBA then has contracts placed within those various codes. And so to have an 8A company, it has to be a sort of a quasi-standalone entity that qualifies in those various business codes. And as a result of that, that's why we set that business model up. We are now evaluating, and we haven't made up our minds yet, whether a graduated 8A, well, previously 8A LLC makes sense to leave it in that arena, or to set up an internal division within S&K Technologies as a new division within that has that particular set of skills with all those folks that work for that, as opposed to leaving it standing out there as an LLC. We're looking at that down the road. So, good question, real good question. Okay.
Final call for questions. Okay, well, we do have pizza, and we have technically another 15 minutes, so hopefully everybody can hang out a little bit and get to know each other, chat informally, and eat pizza, because we have a lot of it. Hopefully it's still warm.
Feel free to ask these two questions since they're here. I'll put them on the hot seat because they're really great employees for us. So.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.